Hello, my name is Corbin Irwin, and this is a presentation for CYB 650, Innovation in Security Frameworks. Today we're going to be using Augusta Medical as our basis and discussing organization, cybersecurity policy, and an executive summary. So our objectives today: summarize the creation and implementation of new information security policies and procedures for Augusta Medical. Explain how risk assessment, cybersecurity frameworks, and regulations change risk posturing. Identify the current state of the risk management and incident response teams for Augusta Medical, and compare and contrast laws, standards, and regulation. We'll also explain policy changes and new information security guidelines, and identify staff education tools that are currently being used within the organization. So how do we create change within our processes and our standards? Well, all guidelines, procedures, and standards should be regularly reviewed. This is outlined within the program audit policies. This allows us to adapt to new challenges and new guidelines that come out. Specifically, the information security team will implement changes to standards when needed in response to contemporary threat intelligence. So new threats that come out, we will adapt to those and be prepared. This will require research on the back end and implementation within the policy. The information security program policies will be updated to stay compliant with guidance from regulators, frameworks, and industry standards. So as regulations and policies changes, we will adapt. The information security program policies, risk posture, and risk appetite will be changed to align with business needs and objectives. So as business needs and objectives change, so will our policy to make sure that we are guided by those as well. So how do we do this? Well, we're basing all of our program that we've created here at Augusta Medical off of the NIST Cybersecurity Framework, or the National Institute of Standards and Technology Cybersecurity Framework. This is a collection of standards, best practices, and guidelines. This collection is used to create a framework that organizations can utilize to design and implement cybersecurity risk assessment and management processes. The framework is designed to work with organizations of varying sizes and can help improve all cybersecurity programs. The framework provides organizations with flexibility, adaptivity, and allows them to improve overall security posture. We've decided to use this because it's very flexible and allows us to adapt as we need and change it to our specific needs within our current information system. So the framework has 5 core functions, also known as the cybersecurity lifecycle: identify, protect, detect, respond, and recover. Within identify, we're looking for risks, assets, and threats. Once we've identified those, we can start to plan. In this stage, we're doing protection. We're now protecting our assets from risks and threats. In detect, we're actively seeking out any kind of abnormalities that might show that there's been an intrusion, an attempted intrusion, or something like that. If we do detect that, we then respond. Once we've responded and put those measures in place, we are recovering from said attack or incident. We then take that information that we've gained from all of these steps and learned, and we go back to identify to restart the process or the life cycle. The framework also has 4 implementation tiers: partial, risk-informed, repeatability, and adaptivity. Now, Augusta Medical has its own specific profile as well. So our current NIST profile is where we are at. We have one that we are working toward, but right now let's discuss where we're at. So our current state, we have our several different functions or life cycle implementations here, and we can see we've identified some of our assets, as we can see here. We've seen some of the critical things that we need for infrastructure. We've identified some risks through risk assessment. We're looking at how we're protecting them, how we're detecting intrusions such as audits, how we're going to respond, and how we're going to recover. Now, not all of this has been implemented yet, so we're at tier 2. We're risk informed. The organization currently operates at risk informed tier and is moving to address all compliance security concerns. Our risk tolerance, this is part of our profile as well. Augusta Medical has established a moderate risk tolerance and is focused on protecting patient information and data confidentiality. Augusta Medical is aware of risk and is implementing mitigation measures. So let's talk a little bit about how we're doing this. Well, we're doing it with our organization cybersecurity policy in part. The cybersecurity policy aims to ensure that Augusta Medical Hospital is extending its core values of integrity, leadership, and excellence into every area of operation. That's part of our mission statement. The policy creates security standards that protect company assets as well as patient information and takes a strong security posture against threats. The security policy aims to provide confidentiality, integrity, and availability for all information systems. So our cybersecurity policy as a whole contains these sub-policies: acceptable use, what you can do with the internet and our information systems; employee onboarding and offboarding, social media policy, how we're going to be using social media, insider threats, addressing threats from the inside or users that might be accidentally a threat, mobile devices, how we're going to be using company mobile devices as well as personal, and common standards, so common things that are being implemented across the enterprise to protect our information systems. We've also redesigned our system, our information system completely. Here you can see a diagram of how we've done that. We can start with internet access from our remote workers or remote clinics, our internal system, our DMZ or demilitarized zone, so outward facing services that are on its own sub-network, which helps protect inward services. Let's just quickly run through an example of how this works here. So let's say we start with our patient portal here. A patient wants to log in. They go through the internet and they go through our first firewall with an intrusion prevention system. At this point, all of these connections are encrypted. They go down to our patient portal server, where they are authenticated using multi-factor authentication, meeting compliance. They get an encryption certificate. They go through our API gateway, which protects what they can actually do on our system. And then they're put through a specific web application firewall, also encrypted. Then they are able to actually access our primary health record system, electronic health record system. All of this network is designed with protection, encryption, and compliance in mind. So let's talk a little bit about risk assessment, business impact analysis, and business continuity planning. Risk assessment is an important process. We talked about that a little bit earlier in our identify stage. We're inventorying critical systems and their impact within our business. We are then assessing risk and identifying mitigation techniques. So risk assessment allows us to see what our risks are and how we can mitigate them. Contingency planning identifies compliance gaps, identifies controls that we can utilize to allow for continued business operation should something happen in the case of an incident. This is our contingency plan. And it creates processes and identifies team members for contingency plan implementation. So when things happen, we are ready to go. So creating the team, creating the plans, identifying the gaps or the possible incidents that could happen. Business impact analysis examines known threats, risks, vulnerabilities, and then bases them or prioritizes them based on likelihood and impact to our business. These are all part of our process within the cybersecurity lifecycle. Let's talk a little bit about comparison of standards. We've talked a lot about laws, regulations, so on and so forth. Let's talk about what those actually mean. So laws, the definition of law. Laws are created by regulators and have a non-voluntary compliance requirement. They are enforceable, and non-compliance can lead to penalties or sanctions. Some examples are GDPR, HIPAA, HITECH. Regulations are rules that regulators put in place to provide more details on how to comply with laws. So an example of that is the HIPAA, or the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act rule for privacy and security. So more specific than just saying HIPAA. It's the actual regulation. Policies are created by the organization to serve as internal guidelines for information security and employee behavior, such as our acceptable use policy. Voluntary standards are optional policies and procedures that are created by industry bodies and organizations. These standards do not have the same legal requirements as laws or regulations, but offer many best practices that can help improve security. Examples of this are ISO 27001, which provides standards for information security management. Frameworks provide a collection of standards and best practices. We already talked about this, the NIST cybersecurity framework. That's what we use to create our new cybersecurity program. That give us a rough framework to build around. The main differences between all of these: enforcement. Who's enforcing this? Do we have to comply? Is there compliance requirements? And then if we do not have compliance, is there a consequence? So for laws and regulations, obviously there is. For things like voluntary standards, there's not, though it is at times better to actually comply because it will show that we are making efforts and there might be some customer value in that. Let's talk about incident response and incident response plan. Augusta Medical's IRP, or Incident Response Plan, serves as a roadmap for incident response implementation and covers topics such as incident handling, communication guidelines, subcontractor guidelines, team structures, communications, expected services during an incident, and training guidelines. So we're covering all of that. How are we handling and reporting incidents? Guidelines for communicating with outside authorities when it's required. Standards for our employees and our contractors and our customers. Creation of structures for the incident response team. Creation and structure, rather. So how are we creating this team? This is something that we're implementing now. So we need to know who we're getting on the team, what they're going to be doing, how they're communicating, the scopes and responsibilities of this team, and then how are we training them, and what requirements for the employees do we have. That's all within our IRP. We're also really working on employee education here at Augusta Medical. Some of the tools that we're using are the handy dandy infographics like this. This is talking about the risk of the internet, so some common threats that we're going to be seeing throughout our business day. We're also going to talk about the Open Web Application Security Project, which lists the 10 top risks that they see. We're also talking about securing web applications. How are we securing our information in our system and keeping it safe? All of these are being distributed to employees to make sure that they are aware of what we're doing and how we're protecting our system and how they can help us with that. And this is an important part of any information security system. So in summary, Augusta Medical is utilizing the NIST framework to meet regulatory compliance and create a more secure information system. New network design supports both business functions as well as a more secure operating environment. So we're meeting our business objectives and being more secure. Implementations of the incident response team and incident response plan ensure quick responses to threats and better outcomes for the organization. Continued use of the NIST framework and cybersecurity lifecycle will allow the information security program to adapt to new threats. Internal policies will better regulate proper system use, asset management, and minimize risk from internal sources. Investment in training will ensure that employees are assets to security and not liabilities. Thank you so much for your time today. These are the references that we use throughout this security brief. I hope you have a wonderful day. We're looking forward to speaking with you soon.